South Florida, late 1970s. A paradise built on sand and soaked in sin. Before the cocaine cowboys made Miami infamous. Before Griselda Blanco and Pablo Escobar turned the whole coastline into a battlefield, there were men already living that life. He was one of them, a young Florida hustler who moved thousands of pounds of marijuana through back roads, airstrips, and fishing boats. He had the cars, the women, the money, and a need for speed that kept his heart racing both on and off the track. But when the cocaine boom hit, everything changed. He started bringing in kilos, pure product at fish scale, the kind that turned small-time hustlers into millionaires or corpses. The stakes got higher, the money got bigger, and in South Florida, loyalty had an expiration date until one night, it all came crashing down. Set up by a friend he trusted, cornered inside a hotel room. When the DEA came through that door, his whole world ended in seconds. He outran the law for years, but nobody outruns betrayal. This is the story of a man who lived a high life in the drug and fueled madness of South Florida and eventually paid the price for it. This is DOC TV Unleashed, and this is the story of a drug smuggler. What's up, everybody? I'm Blessed and Free. Welcome back to another episode of DOC TV Unleashed. If you're tapping into this channel for the first time and haven't watched anything, on this channel I talk about prison, jail, crime, corruption, the injustice that goes on in the justice system, and I bring people on that have lived crazy lives and have had crazy stories to tell. And the guest today is a perfect example of that. For the people that don't know who you are and are tuning in for the first time and don't know who you are, man, if you could just introduce yourself, tell them your name, where you're from, and then we can go ahead and jump right into your story.
Yeah, no problem. So my name is Ken Bear. I'm from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and that's where all the trouble started.
Okay, can you give the people an idea before the trouble started, though, how you grew up and, you know, what type of family you were raised in and that type thing?
I guess most people have, I wasn't from the inner cities. I grew up on a farm in upstate New Jersey I was born in the late 50s, so I grew up during the most calm kind of time of life. We had a farm and quiet life. My dad went to work in the city every day. My grandfather ran the farm. And then in 1969, I moved to New Orleans. So it was a big change going from the Northeast to the deep South. My father had been part of a business down there. We moved down there, and then he passed away shortly after that. So I was a 13-year-old kid without a whole lot of guidance and in a new town, and it was 1970s, and, Woodstock had just happened, and free love and sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and it was even before the sex, drugs, and the rock and roll. It was actually free love, the hippies. There was the Vietnam War, riots in the streets. I was just absorbing all this with a pair of bell bottoms for the first time, And in 1973, my mother decided that she was from Brooklyn and the deep South wasn't gelling, so she decided to move us to South Florida in 1973 to get away from the drugs, which it seems to me she didn't read the newspaper.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
That's really when that's before it started getting really crazy in Miami.
1973 is when people started smuggling in large loads of weed, and cocaine hadn't even started yet. It was still a niche drug, like it wasn't as the explosive it was in the 80s, but marijuana was a lot different in Florida, where New Orleans, we were getting high on cheap Mexican shit, we call dirt weed, and
most people in New Orleans,
Mexican bricks, and most people in New Orleans were doing like Seconal, speed, acid. Marijuana wasn't. It was part of the lexicon. It was part of the daily lives. But when I moved to Florida, is when people did less hard drugs. Like acid wasn't even something you'd really find down here too often. But marijuana was starting to become everywhere, and I got involved in it.
So when you got to Florida and you started to get involved in the marijuana, were you using these drugs too when you were?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I started so in New Orleans, the first thing I did was smoke a little weed, and I thought I was cool. I went to school that next week, Monday, and told some of the cute girls that I smoked pot, and they go, "Really? We've been," I was like the new kid. I didn't know, Even as I say in my book, even the debutantes were already smoking weed before me, and I was 13. By the time I started smoking weed, and then in New Orleans, so the first thing I did was smoke a joint. The second thing I did was a 4-way hit of Orange Sunshine, which was acid. And it was a 4-way hit because you'd cut it in 4 ways, and each person would take a quarter. That's how strong it was. So that was the second drug I ever did.
Damn,
so
it was that strong, and you could split it between 4
people? 4
people?
ways, yeah. You certainly didn't want to eat all 4 of it because you'd be high for like 6 hours on a quarter hit.
Yeah. Do you think losing your father at 13 could have maybe been a reason that you started experimenting like with these drugs and in this type of lifestyle?
We've had conversations, yeah, I didn't have guidance. My best friend growing up, though, was a guy named Frankie Monteleone, who was one of the wealthiest families in New Orleans. And he's the one that turned me on to smoking weed. He was also a child diabetic. So he ended up being a big coke user. And it just, I know if my dad was around, I would have had a lot more guidance. He was a pretty great guy, but we're German. So, he wasn't going to take crap. He's a German mentality of, we just left war-torn Europe, came to America on the run from the Nazis. We had we were immigrants first, we were really taught to work hard, pay attention, be good to the country, get an education. And I skipped school one time, and my dad brought me in his office, and he gave me this heartfelt speech, and he made me feel so guilty, and he was just so hurt about me skipping school that I never did it again. Even after he died, and even after I was a drug runner, when I was in school, I went to school, I did my homework. I was telling someone in 1970s in Florida, I don't care who you were. You could have been the linebacker on the football team. If you screwed up, they pull you in the principal's office and paddle you. Even me, I was selling drugs and everybody in school, I still didn't want to get paddled.
Yeah, imagine what would happen if they did that today.
If you take the cell phone away from an 8-year-old, you'll fight the teacher. I was 16. We started seeing that there was a business. Because to get high, originally, you'd buy some weed, sell some of it. Because remember, there was no other way to get it. You were a criminal. If you smoked a joint, sold a joint, gave a joint away, you could get a year in jail for a joint back in those days. So making it a crime brought you into the criminal side. Not everybody sold drugs, maybe in America, but I can tell you almost everybody in South Florida was selling drugs. And first we're selling weed, and then we were buying little like quarter ounces of blow and selling grams and half grams. And then we were getting Quaaludes and selling Quaaludes. The Quaaludes, they were, we used to call them leg spreaders. I mean, people did a lot of fun things on Quaaludes.
I've heard about them. I never had the chance to do one, but
I'm going to tell you something. When I was a kid in New Orleans, I think I was about 15, and a girl walks up to me in a bar. And it was back then they were called soapers. She was older than me, and she goes, "Here." I'm standing there. She throws this pill in my mouth. She goes, "Eat this. It'll make you do what you want to do." And I was like, "Whoa!" I just swallowed it. And then she would leave. She goes, "Meet me at the Barrel or one of the bars." So I'm driving through New Orleans now, completely fucked up. I mean, I hit a Quaalude, basically. No seatbelt, because who does that back then? I get to the bar. I run into the girl. She grabs me, takes me back to her house, and has her way with me. So that was a great experience. Yeah,
sounds like a good one.
Yeah, it was one of the first. And but back into Florida, we were just selling whatever we could to get some head stash, and it just started getting bigger and bigger. And me and my brother would just, buy a pound of weed, break it down in ounces. We would have people come to us and go, we started to know after a couple of years, like, okay, it's the tourist season. So we got to load up on more Quaaludes, more Coke, and more weed. Or during the tourist season is when the concert season is, right? Because they bring in the bands because there's more people in town. Right. So we would say, all right, Led Zeppelin's playing this weekend. We got to load up on a couple extra, and we would sell people party packs. When they come into our house, we go, "Here, you need like a gram of blow, an ounce of weed, 2 Quaaludes, and a pack of rolling papers." We'd send them down. We were little entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And so just so you know, I always figured when I turned 18, I would stop doing it because I would go to college. And back then, if you got in trouble, you'd go to juvie.
Right.
But at 18, you get charged as an adult. So all us little drug dealers probably said, well, when we go to college, we'll stop dealing. And my brother left for college. He didn't do it anymore. But not me. I just kind of kept going. I wanted to be, wouldn't say I wanted to be a kingpin, but I was trying to climb the ladder, get better and better.
What made you want to go that route and not like go with your brother to the college? Like, what do you think it was?
I'm profoundly dyslexic. I failed first grade, kind of got a bypass, kind of like a bye in high school. I think they just wanted to get rid of me so they could get me out the door.
Yeah, get the weed out of the school.
Yeah, exactly. They graduated me without really passing all the classes. I went to college and I was, still I was selling drugs, went to college for a few months, went to Tampa and just came back. Well, two things happened. I had a partner also that I sold drugs with, bought pounds, sold ounces, whatever. And he moved back to Ohio because there was a building crash here in Florida. And so when he went to Ohio, I started, I was selling weed and he called me up. He goes, hey, I think I can sell some weed up here. I said, well, come on down. I'll give you a couple pounds. So on his day off, he had a long weekend. He was working for the Ford plant, union guy I don't know if he was the union yet, but he was working for the Ford plant. Drove down in a black Trans Am, with the gold Thunder Chicken on the hood and everything. And with his girlfriend, 19-hour drive. He came in town. I was living in a little trailer in Fort Lauderdale. I gave him 2 pounds of weed. He drove home. He did the whole trip in 3 days, which is a lot of work.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. 19 hours each way. Plus, he sold it. Called me up. He goes, hey, I sold that. I think I can sell some more. And at that time, I was doing odd jobs for a yacht broker who had been introduced to me by Frankie Monteleone, and his father and him were flipping boats. His father, very wealthy, so he was buying boats, fixing them up and selling them with this guy. And he had gotten a client who's one of the largest smugglers in U.S. history, Donnie Steinberg. I mean, they've written books about him. He's been in Playboy magazine. You can Google, he brought in probably, I don't know, £1 million over the years he was working, $500,000. I mean, they were bringing in at one point like 200,000 pound loads. And yeah, and I went, so somehow Donnie, I got a bail from Donnie. I called Terry back, my partner in Ohio, said, come on back down. I got a bail, which is about 50 pounds, give or take, Usually a bail's between 45 and 55 pounds. Worth at that time wholesale about 10, 12 grand. Remember, that's 1970s, so 10, 12 grand give to a kid. That's
like 25, 30
well, like
now.
40, yeah,
40,
whatever,
yeah.
It is. Yeah. It was about 50 years ago, so... Well, 45 anyway. So he goes, okay, he drives back down in the gold Trans Am with the Thunder Chicken on the hood and the girlfriend. And we go put the bail in, and the bail's the size of a large suitcase. It won't fit in the trunk. Right. We're shoving it. We're right in front of at like dusk in front of the trailer. And, with a bail, marijuana, a huge thing like a bale of hay. And we squeeze it in the trunk. We had to take the tire, the jack, his clothes, and put it all in the back seat. Got it in, and he drove up there and he sold it. And so he sold 50 pounds, but he might have made $10,000 doing it. I don't know what he made because I only made a small, the spread from down here. And he quit the Ford plant the next, he never worked another day in Ford. You can trust me.
So he was making it, he was flipping it up there decent then.
Yeah. So we started building that. And ended up like we'd have at least owned 3 or 4 big trunkers, which were Caprice Classics, Mercury Marquis, cars that would hold 300 pounds, up to between 280 and 350, depending on how the pot was packaged. And, and we had at least 3 or 4 of those we owned. Plus we'd rent cars. We'd go to National or one of the rent-a-car companies. And to put 300 pounds in the trunk of a car, the car's going to sag.
Yeah.
So we put air shocks on them, and then we put the air shocks, the little, have to hook up an air hose from a gas station to it, and that would be inside the wheel well. And people would normally put them on the bumper, but we didn't do that because we didn't want it to show. And we had cars run. We would move 1,000, 2,000 pounds at a time. We got to. Well, when I got charged, it was a 12-year ongoing operation. But let me tell you. So originally in the 70s, if you got caught with I know guys that got caught smuggling a load of weed and they got 3 years in Club Fed. I mean, it was a white collar crime. I know one guy that caught with 500 pounds. And in the mid 70s, later 70s, they really didn't know what was up until what happened was it just exploded. And then as it got bigger and bigger, they made harsher and harsher laws. But like I like to tell people say to me, well, hey, you did this, you know what you were getting into. I kind of did. I was 16, let's say 15 or 14 when I started, 13 when I started smoking weed. But, I really started selling at 16. You don't realize, and all you think is, I'm just going to sell a couple buds and make a little head stash. And if I get caught, I won't do any real time. To where when I got busted for the second time in 1992, I got charged with RICO. I got busted in 88 with 1,400 pounds. That's that's another story. I got busted with 1,400 pounds in a truck.
Your first arrest, major arrest, was it was in 88.
Yeah.
For how many pounds?
It was like 1,400 pounds.
Only? That's a lot. 1,400. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. But for me, it wasn't. It was. I mean, it was. What happened was one of our friends had 40,000 pounds in Canada that they had brought in. One of my smuggling friends, and they couldn't sell it. So it turned out it was the worst smell. It was horrible. It wouldn't get anybody high. So it sat there in a freezer in like a fish packing plant for a year. Then they contacted me and a smuggling mentor of mine, Bob Silverbullet, and they said, hey, he had a seaplane. So what we did was we brought 200 and 250 pounds at a time, and a lake, from a lake in Canada to a lake in Maine. And we had a pickup truck with a camper. We had a couple houses rented in Maine. We had it all. We went up there over a period of months and set up the whole operation. And once we had 1,400 pounds in a warehouse in Maine, I tried to take the bales and send it to Terry in Ohio and ship it around to some people and buyers. Nobody would buy it. So they said to me, hey, why don't you bring it down to DC? Bob Silverbullet was from DC, and he thought maybe his buddy out there, Tom Payne, could sell it. And I said, Bob, nobody can sell this stuff. It doesn't get you high. That's why Bruce never sold it in Canada. You can't sell it in Canada. Where are you going to bring it next to? Alaska? I mean,
right.
It gets more valuable and less, and you don't need, as it goes up the coast. So obviously you couldn't sell it in Canada. There was the chapter in that book is why I never work on a holiday, because I swore to myself I wouldn't work on my birthday or a holiday, because if I got busted, it would ruin my birthday or that holiday. And it was July 4th weekend. And the other reason I don't like to work on a holiday, and you'll understand this, is that you can't bond out. There's no.
I know, you got to wait.
Right. So, there's no judge. So against my better judgment, I went up there and loaded the weed into a truck. And I had a friend of mine that had been my driver. He had moved tons of weed for me. When we moved blow, and I didn't move blow that often in kilos. I usually sold them in town, but occasionally we'd ship them around. And because I sold a lot of kilos. I mean, I used to have 10 kilos in my house at one time. So you never run out of blow when you have 10 kilos. If you want to party, it can go on for a couple of days, but you got to know better. But so I said to him, hey man, I know you got out of the business. You got a real job. Everything's cool. It's 4th of July. You're getting ready to go home for the weekend, but meet me. He was living in upstate New York. I go, meet me in Maine, fly up or Boston. You'll drive the truck to DC. I'll get out in New York, and because I was going to go see my brother, and I'll pay you double. I'll pay you $2,000 for the day, basically 2 days, and I'll pay for your plane ticket and everything. And he did it. And fuck if we didn't get busted. We were driving down the street, and they had just passed a law, why you never work on a holiday, that Massachusetts couldn't sell fireworks, but Maine could. So we already have this big, I went to rent a truck, and I rented too big a truck because I didn't, 1,400 pounds was actually not that much compared to the 24 or 26 foot truck. So a state trooper sees the truck going down the highway, pulls us over, threatens me basically at gunpoint to open the truck. What am I going to do? I open the truck, and he sees I packed all the bales in boxes with bounce fabric softener, and we put carpet fresh and wrapped them, and I made it all sealed up in there. And he took a pocket knife out. He had no idea. He cut it open, and he goes, what's this? He's looking for fireworks. He thought he was going to get a truckload of fireworks. Why I never work on a holiday weekend. And
he found that fire. It was just the weed.
Yeah, and it wasn't fire. It was. I made a joke that we were smoking a joint in the truck, And right before we got pulled over, and I told my friend, I said, this joint's stronger than all the weed in the back of the truck. And here's the funny thing. I put 1,400 pounds in the truck. When I got charged, it was only 1,260. So
the cops grabbed some?
They probably stole 2 bales, but I could see the cops now trying to sell it. Nobody would buy it.
What was going through your head, man, when the cop was cutting open that box? Like, you had to have known, like, it was about to get serious, right?
Yeah, everything happens kind of in, slow motion, you know what I mean? I mean, you just...
Yeah.
I felt bad for Ricky because I knew I was hoping Ricky wouldn't try to jump out of the truck and run because maybe I was trying to talk to the cop. The cop pulled me over, goes, where you going? I told him my bullshit story. He cut some holes into it. He says, well, you're going the wrong direction. I said, I guess I missed the highway and I'm not from here. And, I had an Ohio driver's license purposely not to have a Florida driver's license while you're moving dope. I had 2 driver's licenses. And, he just, I like to say it was top flight police work. It was pure luck, but and it was illegal. We went to court. Now remember, when you do this, you stall for years. The trick to winning a court case is to stall. And Bob Silverboat had brought a small load of blow in, and he had it up in D.C. He smuggled it in from the Bahamas or someplace in his plane. So I was literally flying to court wearing a suit, meeting one of my drivers in D.C., and we had 2 warehouses, one for the coke, one for the money. I had keys to both, right? We had the coke stash and the money drop. And I would literally get the coke, give it to one of my runners, take the cash back, throw it in the other warehouse and fly to court, go to a court hearing. They say, okay, postpone till another date, fly home or fly back to DC to meet another, because the stupid thing is, what was I going to do? I had to pay for lawyers. I had gotten in trouble. I got caught up in a case before that, but I didn't get charged. And I was a younger kid, and I went to the lawyer. I said, I don't know what to do. What do I do? And one of the cases, the lawyer looks at me and goes, seems like what you're doing is paying really well. Just don't get caught. Wow. And I'm like, that's the advice you're giving me?
Damn, that's crazy that a lawyer would tell you that.
Right. But, listen.
You're bringing them money, though, so.
Right. Remember, the war on drugs was the people that made all the money were the politicians loved it because they could find a villain to attack, like the boats they're blowing up in Venezuela now. I'm not saying they're not drug boats, but they're certainly not bringing fucking fentanyl. They may not even bringing drugs to America. And not all those boats are drug boats. They might be, smuggling people, whatever. But it's a talking point. There was such a political talking point with the war on drugs. Right. Nixon started the DEA because he wanted to put, Reagan, and his wife, don't just say no to drugs. I understand. I understand the issues are societal. The president of Mexico, not this one, but the one before, said, we don't have a drug problem. America does. Our problem is it keeps coming through our country to your country. Colombia doesn't really have a drug problem. Most Colombians don't smoke weed. They're not screwed up on blow all day. It's America that funnels the money down there. Now, doesn't mean I have an answer for it. Doesn't mean I've lost 2 friends to fentanyl, and both of them didn't know they were doing fentanyl. One girl smoked a joint, a good friend of mine, and she died from it because it was laced with fentanyl. Another friend of mine's son was just a 20-something and thought he was doing blow for the first time. And another friend of mine's young kid that's worked for me, a great kid, he did 2 weeks in a hospital in a coma because he thought he was doing blow.
Bro, half of my high school graduation class is overdosed by now.
Dead or
no, yes, dead, man. Like it's insane what, the climate now of drugs is just totally different than it was when you were doing your thing.
Yeah, weed is basically illegal. You can get it in 39 states. But how about this? This is a true number. 2023 and 2024, the numbers are almost identical. 250,000 people were charged with cannabis crimes, 92% for simple possession. So they're still putting people in jail for weed, or still charged, even if they're not, they're still being charged. And you and I know, once the system gets a hold of you, it's a beast. Yeah. I always say, you can get away with all the crimes you can as long as you can. But when the system gets a hold of you, you're fucked. They know what they're doing, and they will put you in that system, and they will crush you with lawyers and time and break you and destroy families. It's the system's a beast and it has to be fed. We have the largest prison system in the world. More people do more time. I have a friend of mine that did 22 years for weed. When he got extradited to Spain because he's a Spanish citizen, and he got out of jail because of COVID, and he's an older man. He said when he went to report to the Spanish police department, they never seen anybody that did 22 years. They just don't give time out like that. I have another friend that did 27. I knew another guy, Bobby Platshorn, who wrote a great book, The Black Tuna Diaries, did 30 for weed. Tommy Powell, we just did Tommy Powell on my podcast. He was looking at life plus 70 years for weed. Life plus, what do they do after you die? They put your body, they freeze.
I know, right? And re-sentence you.
Right, what do you do when you're on your way to the lunch hall? They got you frozen on the side of the wall. People just knock on the glass and wave. I mean,
you are now fighting this charge. Your lawyer's dragging it on, telling you you're still doing the same thing because you got to pay for the lawyer.
Pay for the lawyers.
What was the next step as far as you coming into contact with like law enforcement, and how did that go down?
Well, so we beat that case. We were in the smallest working courthouse in America. It's in Salem, Massachusetts. I tell the story. I was testifying for my life, because I had to get up and say, I put the weed in the truck. I said, my friend didn't know anything about it. He was just meeting me. I try to protect him and say, the deal was if we would have gotten we were in a suppression of evidence hearing for them. If we would have been found, if we'd have went the prosecutor's way, then I was just going to plead guilty and hope that they didn't, let my friend go. My lawyer goes, by the way, and remember, I had to pay like $80,000 in lawyers. I had two lawyers and a private detective, and $1988. Actually, my bond was $80,000 for the two of us, $40,000 each. No kidding. So, and the prison was a fucking hellhole. It had been built in 1863. When the cop was driving us to the jail, he looks at, and we're not from there. He goes, "You know where you're going?" We're like, "No, I know." He goes, "You're going to Lawrence House of Detention." He goes, "They don't even have toilets. You have to shit and piss in a bucket and walk it." And literally, they just got the stainless steel combo model, which I was very happy to see. But literally, prior to that, they didn't have power doors. They had the screw would come by and unlock the door, and then you shit and piss in a bucket. And then you or your cellmate had to carry it down to a big cauldron, and you dump it in this cauldron, and then you had to take a 2x4 and shove it down the hole. So,
oh my God, bro, that's crazy.
And can you imagine from 1863 to 1988? That's what people did. And can you imagine who got the job? I mean, I can't imagine if there was four guys in the cell. My bed it wasn't meant for that. My nose basically touched the ceiling, and the only thing next to me was a big hole. The rat would cut, a rat hole, and a light bulb that was, a single light bulb on the wall. And yeah, man, I was like, imagine that. You know how prison is. If the smallest guy is probably the guy that's going to have to carry the shit bucket.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're probably not going to do turns unless the guard comes in and says, "McGillicuddy, it's your time, get the bucket." But luckily, I didn't get the shit bucket. We did go when we finally went. It was about a couple of weeks when we finally made it to court to bond out. And this is during AIDS, and we didn't shave because we didn't have anything. They didn't give you. So in that jail, you didn't get clothes. You didn't get anything. If you needed clothes, somebody in town, one of your relatives would have to bring you a change of clothes. I swear to you, man. Yeah, my brother came by and he gives me some short. Oh, it was the hottest it had ever been since they built the jail. I did some research. The hottest summer it had ever been since they built the jail in 1863. There was the guys on the third tier at one point were lighting paper and throwing it down to try to hit the 50-gallon drums that carried the trash. And I told him because they were mostly Puerto Rican, and a good part of the jail was Puerto Rican or Spanish. And I go to my cellmate. I go, "Jose, what are they doing? What are they saying?" He goes, "They're trying to light the garbage cans on fire." I go, "Why?" Because they're on the third tier. I'm on the bottom tier. Think about how much hotter it is on the third tier.
Heat rises. So.
Yeah, and you got all those people breathing and sweating and smelling all the way up.
Stunk too, I bet.
Yeah, and I go, "What are they doing?" He goes, "They're trying to set the 50-gallon drums on fire." I go, "Why?" He goes, "Well, they figure if the smoke catch on fire, the guards will take us outside and we'll get some cold air or some relief." I go, Jose, if they could just catch on fire and we could all die of smoke inhalation. They may not, So I'm watching little like fireflies drop, and I'm like in my cell going, no, don't hit. And about a month later, after we got out, my buddy sent me a newspaper article. They did it. They did start the jail on fire and burn the jail down. And they started a whole fire. Prisoners tried to get out. Cops came, fire department, hoses. You can you imagine a prison riot?
Yeah, yeah.
So I got out of that, and then we beat the case. Like I said, I was in the courthouse, and I was telling that story. And my lawyer says, while you're testifying, a lot of times there's a tour group that comes around noon. That's the Witches of Salem tour. So while I'm testifying, I see a tour group go through. And this is and it is the funny thing. This is government at its best. That really isn't the jail where the witches lived, or were hung or burned, whatever they burned them. That jail got knocked down, or that courthouse, I'm sorry, the courthouse where they tried the witches, that was actually down the block. It had got knocked down or burned down. So they just took a second place and said, this is where the witches were hung. But it wasn't. But for $12.95, you get the tour, you go to, So that was 1988. We had I'd done another the biggest smuggling trip I ever did. And when I was a kid I was in Jamaica when I was 19 on the run from another case. And that was the one I talked about that I really almost got dragged into, but I didn't. That was my first smuggling trip. We brought 600 pounds out of Jamaica, me and my friend Bob Silverbull and a friend of mine, Big Jeff. That was my first smuggling trip. In 1985, me and a couple friends brought in 300 kilos of coke. I was just kind of working as an offload. I mean, they were friends of mine. Everybody, what do you got? We're all going to offload a plane. All right, I'll do it. Seemed like a fun thing to do.
300 keys. Damn, you guys were moving weight, man.
Yeah, that one was pretty big, and got away with that. And we went to do it a second time, and the guy that put the trip together, a good friend of mine, I talk about it in the book, he didn't make it. He died in Colombia on a plane. Well, you know how you said most of your graduating class or half had OD'd?
Yeah.
Growing up in the drug wars, by the time I was graduating high school, people were ODing on coke, but they were dying in Colombia. Steve Barron died in a plane crash in a DC-3. Unfortunately, in 1985, Nathan died in a plane with overloaded with coke and fuel. Another friend of mine, Merritt, was killed. They found him dead in a bathtub in Colombia. I mean, people were getting, the cocaine brought in the cocaine cowboys, and people were getting machine gunned and killed, and like the Scarface type of stuff in the movie.
So when that started happening, man, and you're in this game and this stuff's happening, is it ever crossing your mind like, man, I could end up dead or with another case, like caught up again?
Well, so one of the things that growing up, I used to race cars. When you have drug money, you have to spend, I went auto racing. And how do you get in a race car and you see somebody else's car catch on fire as you're going by it? You always believe it's not going to happen to you.
Right.
That's the only way you go to war. That's the only way you go into battle, is you believe you're smarter, stronger, faster, better, and it's not going to happen to you. And that's how you go on a runway in the middle of the night and on a dirt road and bring in 300 kilos. You think they're not going to come that night. A friend of my dad's, who was probably the person that could have kept me out of all this, had my dad and him been on my life. He was a judge, and I remember him coming to have lunch with me and my mother coming to Florida. They were from New Orleans. It was after the 88 bus, but before the 92 bus. And he said, hey, I said, oh yeah, I beat that case in Mass. And he seemed to know more about it than, maybe he knew what happened to me. He goes, and he tried to tell me, you're going to get busted. And he stopped himself. He goes, listen, I know how this ends. And he just goes, like, why bother? I'm not going to listen. He knew I wasn't going to listen. Right. He knew I'd have to burn, I've already been burned once. I got busted for 1,400 pounds. I was looking at 10 years, and I beat the case, and it just didn't faze me. One of the things, I don't know why, why do we keep doing what we're doing, and
I know, I ask myself that a lot.
Yeah. When do we wake up and smell the coffee, And that's the interesting thing about the human psyche, right? I mean, we do these podcasts. I do mine, the One Step Over the Line podcast. You do yours. The interesting thing is the people and what makes them tick and how they dealt with, I didn't do any big time in prison, but like I said, I've known people that have done long time in prison, and it's
It seems to be the system from my perspective, is the system wouldn't survive locking people up and thrive like they do if drugs weren't in this world. I mean, drugs play a huge part in the system, the lifestyle, the murders, the deaths, everything, man.
But the system is getting rich on the I'm not going to call them victims, but one of the things that you see when like I said, I did 2 weeks in Massachusetts in a hellhole. I did 3 months in Ohio after I got busted in '92, and you see there's several different layers of prisoners, right? There's people that are career criminals that are just not part of society, and they're smart, or they're mentally challenged, but they're never getting out of the system. When you're in jail and you're somewhat come from a decent family, you're educated, you see it's a huge black and brown population. I mean, in the jail in Ohio, there was like 4 picnic tables or 5 picnic tables to hold there were 17 cells, 2 guys to a cell. There was 8 white guys at a table, and the other 4 tables were the rest of the jail. It's a lot of inner city black and brown incarceration. And this is a cycle, their cousins, mothers, brothers, they're friends from, and when I say it, and I talk about it a lot in the book, it's a cycle that's not going to be broken. When your father's in jail, or your friends are in jail, and he's just part of it's like, I use the term a lot, the lexicon of their lives. It's the language of their inner city lives. There's a great book out called Smuggler by Roger Reeves. He did like 30 years in 6 different jails in 5 countries. And in the end of the book, he basically says one of the things that not everybody should have children, because when you see a lot of mentally disturbed, or people that weren't raised right, or good families, or any family, and they're just destined to go to jail, right? So Roger says people, you have to have a driver's license and take a test to drive a car. You might want to need the same thing for people to have babies.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a generational curse almost. It just keeps following itself.
Exactly. And so when I was growing up, the only one person I'd ever known, my dad's friend, was a financial guy, and he went to jail for a couple of years for buying and selling gold when it was illegal at the time to buy and sell gold. He found a workaround, got caught. Phil Stoller was his name, and he was like a Wall Street money guy. That's the only person I ever heard of going to jail. In our world, there's so many people now imprisoned.
I know.
So again, maybe Roger was right. Maybe people should have to take a test and get a license before you reprocreate and have children. And the inner cities is the worst thing, because there's just no education and no way out.
I know.
Yeah.
Back to your story. When did it happen in your life during this time that shit really hit the fan?
So in 1992, and the business had been winding down, like marijuana we were moving thousands and thousands of pounds of, Colombian weed. The government had closed down the ports, they put up blimps in the air, radar. Remember, hate begets hate, crime begets crime. The dollars and drugs, the cops were getting better boats, better night vision goggles, but bigger offices, newer cars, better radios. It was a business developing, and the people that got rich were the lawyers, the politicians, and the people that made money off them, like bail bondsmen. It was exploding. By '92, the cocaine cowboys had come and gone, and it just kind of settled down. So. And by the way, what people don't understand, back then, marijuana is a crop that's grown and harvested like corn, wheat, and other crops back then. It wasn't grown indoors. So it's harvested in October, right? It's the Halloween, the harvest season. It's dried, bucked, hung up, packaged, and everything. And the best weed is in around Christmas time. And then in the summertime, there's less and less weed, because the only thing left is the shit that didn't sell.
Right.
So I got married in 1992 in July 18th was my wedding date to my first wife. Come back from my honeymoon. I'd spent like 40 grand, through a wedding, went to Aspen, went to Vail, went to Santa Fe, paid for the whole wedding, paid for all the parties. I had sold my pickup truck because I just was going to get something new and took my wife on a honeymoon. Come back and I look at my wife at the time and I go, I got to go back to work. I just spent,
All the money.
in today's world, $80,000, $90,000.
Yeah.
And my wife goes, at the time we had a 1.5-year-old daughter. And she goes, don't go. Please don't go. We're married. We have a daughter. She came from real poor beginnings. I came from, upper middle class. She goes, I'll go to work. You'll go to work. I'll eat mayonnaise and bologna sandwiches. She goes, hell, I'll eat mayonnaise and white bread sandwiches. Just don't go to work. Don't go back. Get a job. And I'm like, part of me is like, I want to go back on the road. So we went out to Texas because we were going to buy like the $800 pound Tex-Mex kind of Sensimilia they were bringing out of Mexico. Now the weed was better. So I go out to Texas and I brought my driver. I had a big truck that had secret compartments, like a work truck. So he took it out there. I flew out. I had another guy out there. I had about $80,000 out there. And we had a couple guys that I knew out there, and I copped 100 pounds of weed. So I drive it to Ohio to sell to my partner. What I didn't know, and my partner had come to my wedding and seen my little daughter, and I'm sharing the ring, showing him the wedding ring. And he was my brother, man. We started in high school together. He had 4 kids. His youngest kid is my godson. And what I didn't know was another friend of mine, actually the guy that introduced me to my wife, had brought 1,000 pounds up there. He was on the run for an international cocaine smuggling charge, and he had 5. I mean, he had been busted once before. Me and him were moving along. I mean, the cops really wanted him. He got busted once before when I put up the money to move 20 pounds of Sensimilia out of California to Ohio, and he got busted in Nebraska with his fake ID was expired, and that was a shit show. I lost a bunch of money, and we were just trying to sell some little bit of weed, like open up the Sensimilia market, the green good bud that we sell today in Ohio. They wanted him. He was on the run from a cocaine smuggling charge. He had skipped out of bond on a marijuana charge, and my partner in Ohio. It turned out behind my back, they had done 1,000 pounds. He had moved 1,000 pounds from Mexico up to Ohio, and it was dirt weed. And we just weren't. That operation didn't have the ability to move that kind of weed at that size. But they did the deal without telling me. Obviously, if they'd have told me, I would have said, fine, you owe me $10 a pound. Give me $10,000 and go your own thing. And I even called my partner on the phone, payphone to payphone, Terry in Ohio, and I said, hey, I got wind through another friend of ours, Big Jeff, the guy that I brought the first load out of Jamaica with, that Kelly's back in country. And you guys are working together. Has Kelly been up there and is he bringing you weed? Because if he's up there and coming, I'm not coming. He's an accident waiting to happen. Being on the run for years just wears you down. It's just, for somebody to go on the run and really do it, you can't see your family. I mean, you don't, during Christmas, the FBI used to call his family's house every Christmas, and his name was John Kelly, and his last name was Vickers, and he would go by Kelly. He went by his middle name. So the FBI or the Marshal Service would call up every Christmas. Hey, is John there? No, nobody called him John, not even his mother. So they knew.
It was like a fuck you to them.
Yeah, they go, yeah, John's not here. So anyway, the night I got busted, I drove up. We had 100 pounds. I paid 80 grand for it. I remember driving up and now my partner Terry's like, we can't come to the house anymore. My kids are getting too smart. And he had said that to me. He goes, we're going to meet at a hotel. And I remember driving to the hotel, and I see a carload of like big guys drive by me in this like little rental car. And I just got that gut,
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Your stomach like drops and anxiety instantly.
And you don't know why.
Right.
I did the Mike Drop podcast. Mike's an ex-Navy SEAL. And he says, what we say in the SEALs, trust your gut. Yeah. So I was so sent by that one thing that I told Paco, my driver, who was from Peru, which didn't help things for him. I go, Paco, go over behind, and we parked behind a Taco Bell right on Lake Erie watching the waves come in. And I just sat there for like 20 minutes going, I don't know, what it is. But I went over to the hotel. I remember going downstairs. I checked into the room. I remember going downstairs and getting a roll of quarters from the front desk to call my wife. It was $2.25. There was no payphone. I had a cell phone, but I forgot why I was using the payphone instead, probably because I didn't want to tie the cell phone records. And I remember the lady behind the desk kind of acting weird. Like, I was like, hey, I'm room 223. Can I get a roll of quarter? And I'm calling my wife. I go back up, and on the balcony, the room next to me was where the cops were. On the balcony, I see this chick, and she's like gray t-shirt, pants, like, and I'm gosh, she's kind of cute, nice, nicely put together, long black hair. That's the arresting officer. That was gonna be. I go in the room, and I'm sitting there with Paco, and Terry comes in the room. And he's wearing a raincoat. And I go, the fuck is he wearing a raincoat for? It's, it is Ohio, but it's not raining. And as soon as I lit up he lit up a roach, he goes, hey, you want to smoke? I go, yeah, he lit up the roach. That was the cue. 260-pound guy lands on me, door explodes open, cops freeze, SWAT team, we're all handcuffed. And I remember looking over at Terry on the ground. We were both looking at each other. I go, you just set me up. I mean, this wasn't I knew that we were not both in the same circumstances right then. And
could you tell that by how they came in and handled you?
Yeah, I mean, I just knew. I just knew that
you knew. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought, well, they only got what are they going to get? 100 pounds? Big deal. It's the smallest trip I've ever done, basically. But when you screw up, you do it all. I had a matchbook from the hotel from the Tex-Mex border. I had the keys to the secret compartment in the truck in my pocket instead of hitting somewhere else. I had my cell phone, which I had used at the Tex-Mex. I mean, I thought, fuck, they got all the evidence. They went right in my pocket, pulled the keys out to the truck. I should have thrown them in a toilet or something, like hid them somewhere in the room. But what I didn't know, what I found out when I went to get booked in and I looked through the glass and I'm being fingerprinted and showered and there's Kelly. So now I see Kelly and me and I go, oh, fuck. Fuck, Terry turned me in, but he turned Kelly in, and Kelly's on the run from a big cocaine smuggling charge. So then what happened is I found out I was in jail for like months, waiting to get indicted. Finally, one day, this one guard, Bill, calls me out of my cell, and there's some guy in a suit, like brown suit, not security, jail clothes, blue, And he goes, you Ken Bear, or Kenneth Stephen Bear? I go, thinking, yeah, who else could I be? You just pulled me out of my cell.
I know,
is there a third guy in there?
Yeah.
He hands me my indictment papers. I open them up, and I start skimming, and I see Rico. And I just go, and Bill goes, Kenny, we're putting you on suicide watch tonight. I go, what for? And then I'm like reading the papers. I'm like, now I'm shell shocked, right? Now I know, and I'm looking at 25 years, and I have a newborn baby, and I've just been married, and my wife's alone in the house. And by the way, Hurricane Andrew had hit in the middle of that. So we were locked in our cells.
That was a bad one too.
Right. And South Florida, I mean, I'm barely getting the news from and even the guys in prison are like, no, let this guy watch the news. I mean, they knew that my family was in dire straits, and so I got busted on August 18th, I think it was. It was exactly a month after I got married, and Andrew hit on the 21st. So, but I basically was in jail looking at the hurricane hit my family's homes, my wife and kids. So I don't know, my wife and daughter, my 1.5-year-old daughter. So I spent I go back to my cell. I tell the guard, you don't have to put me on suicide watch because I'm not good. First off, I didn't think I could actually get 25 years. I mean, I'm like, come on, I mean, really? For 100 pounds of weed? But then as it peeled out, it was a 12-year ongoing criminal enterprise. And what they wanted was, which I found out after 3 months of being in jail, trying to bond out, not get bond, because they don't want you to get out, because then you can't, if you don't get out, if you don't get bond, you can't fight a case from jail.
Right.
You're never going to win that battle. Is they wanted Kelly. They wanted him as, I was the kingpin. If Kelly had never went behind my back, never sold 1,000 pounds, never been there, he never would have been involved in it. But as I was bonding out, I'm leaving. The cops pull me back in. I go, man, I made bond. They go, no, but sit down. We need to talk to you. The prosecutor wants Kelly. You're looking at 25 years, and we're going to put all the weight on you to testify against Kelly. And I told the arresting officer, I go, I didn't know anything about what they were doing. He goes, we know that. They told us that. And Terry told us that. But you knew the history of Kelly. You know what you were his partner. And I was his partner for years. We're all partner up in different deals. And I go, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm never going to testify in court against Kelly. He's been my friend. I will never testify in open court against Kelly. You'll never get me to do it. They go, we just need some information. Give us the name of what his fake name was when he got busted in Nebraska. I said,
Just to clarify, they ended up giving you a bond after this hurricane hit and everything?
I finally I bonded out, right? Yeah, took me, you only get like the last try,
Right.
And I made bond, and that's the last thing they said to me. And so I went home and I kind of went through my American Express records and I found the name. I called the cop up. I go, listen, I'll give you the name, but I will never testify against him. And they never asked me to. And while I was out, my lawyers kept telling me, buddy, you got to work for the cops. They go, you're going to jail for a lifetime. I go, I'm not doing that. And a friend calls me up, Dave Jackson, who is a yacht broker, never sold drugs, but he got caught up in selling smugglers a boat for cash, because that's conspiracy. And they make that shit up. They have someone knock on your door. Hey, I'm buying, a boat. I'm kind of from Colombia. And all you have to do is get you on tape agreeing to it.
Conspiracy is the easiest to prove, man.
Yeah, it can happen. I've had friends go to jail 5 years after they went straight.
Yeah.
I had my friend Big Jeff, 5 years after he went straight. He had 2 kids. His wife, 2 kids went to like foster homes, and did not go well for the son. The son, fucking foster homes and all that stuff.
I already know, that's crazy life.
Yeah. So I ended up. Dave called me up. He goes, "Hey, how'd you like to work for the DEA?" Now I'm in Florida. I got no car. I got a $400 car. I'm working at a repair shop doing odd jobs. I'm painting my friend's house. I got nothing. I don't know what I'm going to do. What's your
wife doing at this point?
No, she's a mother raising a 1.5-year-old daughter. And you know what happens there. Everybody's good when you got the cocaine, the weed, the jet skis, the limos, the planes. She's probably looking for an exit strategy. She's worried about, as a mother, who's going to feed her 1.5-year-old daughter. Right. But she stayed with me, and it was destroyed the marriage. The marriage lasted another 10 years until she got hooked on Oxycontins and left me to raise the 2 kids. Oh, while I was on bond, I got her pregnant with my son. So now I have a pregnant wife, a 1.5-year-old, and this guy's going to me, "Hey, how'd you like to work for the DA?" And I'm looking over my shoulder. So my wife, I go, "What are you, crazy?" He goes, "Listen to me. Come meet me for lunch. You got nothing." So I go meet him for lunch, and I go, What is in this for you?" He goes, "Well, I'll get credit. I told him you were a big time smuggler, a long time guy in the business, and kind of oversold me." I go, by the time he got done, I was some kingpin probably. I go, he was a good salesman. I go, "But what are you doing?" He goes, "I'll get credit for what you do." I go, "What? It's kind of like Amway? What is it, like multi-level marketing, working for the government?" Turns out it is. Yeah. So he introduces me to this guy we call Captain Bobby, and he was a DEA agent in Jacksonville, which is not South Florida. It's 6 hours in northern Florida. And I ended up working for 2 years undercover for the DEA. It was kind of strange. Like, even when I was in the Ohio jail, like, a guy comes up to me and goes, "Listen, I'm never getting out of here. Here's the name of this guy in Detroit. He's wanted by the police. This is his phone number." He goes, "If you get out, use this to help you." People were calling me up. I make friends of mine. "Hey, I got a guy, I want to get even with." People were giving me names. I'm like, this is crazy. But I took every bit of the information. I passed it on to the DEA. They ended up busting the guy in Detroit that was, the fucking guy in jail that I barely knew. And I never turned in any of my own friends. A couple guys that were distant acquaintances, but I basically made cases by people giving me a name of somebody, or the DEA putting me into cases. Like, "Look, we need you to, they can't play the role like I can." I was around when the cocaine first came in. It was wrapped in duct tape, and then it would be plaster from the cast. Then it's fiberglass because you have to throw them out of a plane. They have to make, I was around from the very beginning when the Marlboro boxes had the killer red and orange buds, and I could play the part. And one time, the DEA says to me, calls me up, and he's this big burly guy. He goes, "Hey, meet me at the Embassy Suites." And that's like 15 minutes from my house. I go to my wife. John's, the DEA's in town. He's in Fort Lauderdale. I got to go see him. So I go to this hotel room, and he's up at this junior suite, probably government rate, and he's got a pen and a paper, and he's sitting there like a therapist with his legs crossed. I go, "What's up, man?" He goes, "Well, you've been doing good work for us, but my superiors want you to proffer yourself." And you know what proffer is? It's a fucking trick bag. Proffer is that you will tell everything you've ever done with everybody you've ever done it with. And as long as you tell 1,000% everything you've ever done, you can't be prosecuted for anything you did. But if you leave anything off the list, then they can come back and charge you for all of it. And everybody that you give them the name, you have to then help them bust them. And if you do, or if they get busted, you have to go to court and testify. And I start, talking, he's writing. I go, John, that was his real name. I go, I can't do this. I went to high school with half the people I did business with. They're friends of mine since we were kids. I got a wife and a 1.5-year-old. I'm going to be in jail. Who's she going to turn to for help? You can't have me do this. I knew he hated paperwork. He goes, you want a steak? I go, yeah. He goes, let's go across the street. There was a place called Chuck's Steakhouse, which had a salad bar. It was like one of our favorite. All the smugglers, all the cops hated Chuck's. We go over there and he goes, sit in this chair right here. This is kind of a crazy story. And I go, all right. So we order steaks. Government's buying me a steak, not the first time, but it didn't happen very often. And I'm eating my steak, got the side of mushrooms, I'm going for the whole thing. Yeah. And he's a big guy, and he's sitting, he goes, look over my shoulder. I go, he goes, you see the guy at the bar with the leather jacket on and the red shirt? I go, yeah. He goes, all right. He goes, I'm going to get up and pay the bill. And I'm going to walk out of here. When I clear the door, you go up there and talk drug deal to him, see what we can do find out what he's all about. I go, you want me to get up and talk to a complete stranger at a bar about a drug deal?
That's crazy.
And then he walks out. I walk up and I start talking. And the guy looks like a character out of like a New York mob movie, like Martin Scorsese. Like he's got the black leather jacket, hair slicked back, red. Huh?
Like some Goodfellas type deal?
Yeah, swear to God. And I'm talking to him. I'm looking around the room to see who else is in the bar. And I'm thinking to myself, and we're talking, he's opening up. And of course, I know the rap. I mean, I've been selling drugs my whole life. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy's too open. He's probably working for another agency. And he's wearing a leather jacket because he's hiding the wire underneath it. So, I start feeling him out and we start talking and nothing comes of it. But I called Captain Bobby the next day and said, yeah, the guy didn't come up with anything that I think we can work with. I didn't pursue him. And I said, for all I know, he's working for customs. There's different regions of the DEA. There's the Northern District. Like when they divide the state into districts, the FBI, the DEA. There's the Northern District, the Central District, or Middle District, and Southern District. So I lived in the Southern District, but I was working for the Middle District. So I literally had to go to the DEA and sign in down here. And the funny thing is, I've done a couple cases where other agencies came in, and every time we got done with the case, the cops would go, hey, why don't you come work for me? Because, the agents need guys like us,
guys like you that can talk the lingo and
bring in a client, if you will. And I'm like, no, dude, I don't get to pick who I work for. I'm working,
at this time when all this is going on, is it set up for you? Are you doing this for the DEA to work off the 25 years? And how long? What are they expecting out of you for how long for that to happen?
Well, they never promise you anything. You don't know what's going to happen. All you know is that, so the deal the DEA made with Ohio, because I got busted in the state and these are the feds. So they had me originally come up to Jacksonville. They had the people from Ohio, the arresting officer, and the 260-pound linebacker that landed on me. and they come down and we go out for a boat ride because the guy, Captain Bobby, had already confiscated like a fleet of boats that he kept in Jacksonville. And I tell the story in the book, and I'm wearing the suit my mother bought me from Saks Fifth Avenue, because my mom was hoping I'd do more than sell drugs. She bought me a suit. I go, Mom, drug dealers don't need a suit. Well, it turns out you do need one if you're going to go to court. So I remember showing up there in my $400 canary yellow station wagon. I drove 6 hours with no air conditioning, wearing a suit. I get there and I'm introduced. I know that Dennis Kavanaugh, the arresting officer, and whoever the big guy was that landed on me. And they introduced me to the DEA guy now that I finally meet him in person. And he goes, look at here, a drug smuggler in a suit. Kind of looks like spats on a hog, don't it? I'm like, what? But they bought me a steak that day too. And they made a deal. Everything that I did for the DEA and the feds, whatever we confiscated, the state of Ohio would get a piece of. So like we busted a guy with a boat. They sell the boat, they get a piece of it. And that's all Ohio cared about. So it went on for 2 years. A friend of mine invited me to her wedding. I said, I can't go. I can't tell her I'm working for the DA. She goes, why can't you come? I'll pay for your plane ticket. I said, you don't understand. There's no days off. when you work for the DEA. You have a sword. You know, there's a story about the sword of Damocles. It's a sword that hangs over a guy's head, and every day, if he doesn't, whatever, it's going to drop and kill him, you know. I had the sword of Damocles, to use a Greek mythology term, if that's whatever. I had a gun to my head every day, and every day I had to produce. John would call me up and go, "Hey, you know, snitching's like selling cars, you know, whatever." He goes, "If you miss a day, you look like hell. My bosses want to know what cases you're bringing." And I go, "Man, I'm doing the best I can." And then he told me up, "All right, go down here and work." We had another guy.
You had to have been hating life at this point, man, with these guys on your neck. Like,
every friend I know, nobody will talk to me, you know. And
does anybody know that you are working for the DEA?
No, but here's what I did to make sure that I never, when I was in jail in Ohio, and my lawyers are telling me, and I don't, you know, I'm getting charged. I just called my right-hand guy, who was one of my best friends, and also knew everybody, had a big mouth, thank God. I said, "Listen, you got to do this. Tell everybody that I got busted. Tell everybody that I don't know what's going to happen or what I have to do. But no matter what I do, never talk about doing any business or a drug deal with me. No matter if I see them in a bar, if I walk into their business, just tell them." So I took a poison pill just to make sure I could never turn in one of my friends, you know. Yeah. And I never tried, but I could, like, one time there was a guy that we moved a lot of coke together. So I went over and saw him at his business. I had the tape recorder going. We smoked a joint, but we never said anything. And, you know, I just told the DEA, I go, "Yeah, I tried this guy, you know, I made it, you know," just so they saw, you know, it was like throwing some shade on them too, you know. "Yeah, I tried another one, but didn't work."
Were you ever worried wearing a wire and doing these things that you would get caught, or did you feel like that if that ever got to that point, the DEA was going to come in to save you at that?
Well, so here's the story that'll, you know, most of the time they're there, but not always. Sometimes you're on your own. You're making payphone calls. The way I had to have to set up a deal on a payphone to payphone was I have the tape recorder. They told me to go out and buy a special little tape recorder. I have it up here in the box, and I could show it to you. And they had a plug-in to go on the phone, and you'd have to do it like this. All right, December 23rd, 1992, let's say it's 3:30. I'm at payphone number 954-5555. I'm calling payphone number 55, whatever, calling this guy, Bill. We're going to talk about a 300 kilo smuggling run. And then at the end of the tape, you hang up and go, time, 3.
All ended at...
Yeah, because that way in court, they can prove it's never been edited or everything's timelined. And then you have to take it and send it up to the DEA for them to review.
I have to ask you, coming from the life you come from and living that whole life that you did, and, you know, now you're essentially turned into a DEA informant, you're working for the DEA. How do you feel internally doing this?
While I'm doing it?
Yeah.
So you're kind of numb, right? You're swimming for your life. There's no time to think, you know. I mean, literally at one point, Dave Jackson, the op broker, goes, "Dude, you're scattered. You need to go on these like medicine to focus." And I go, "No, I don't." And my wife's like, and then the DEA agent calls me up and goes, "You need to get on." So I went down to like a psychologist and had a 15-minute appointment. He put me on some pills. I mean, so I'll tell you one story so I end up a friend of mine that I had never done a drug deal with in my life. I hadn't seen him in 4 or 5 years, comes up to me and goes, and he was an acquaintance. We didn't, he wasn't from high school. He was an older guy. He goes, "Hey, I have 125 pounds to sell." And I go, "Tom, I'm working for the DEA, or I'm working for the cops." He knew I got busted. He goes, "That's okay." He goes, "As long as you don't turn any of your friends in." He goes, "You want to sell this 125 pounds for me?"
Damn.
And I'm like, "What now?" Right. I mean, are the cops checking me out? And he told me, he goes, "Yeah, I worked for him. When I got busted, I gave some names, whatever." I'm like, "What do I do?" So I send Tom, I go, "Listen, go to Jacksonville, see my friend up there. He'll sell the weed for you." And I'm not going, because I'm on paper, I can't go. And of course they bust him. So he turns in his Jamaican connection. They go to me, "All right, fly to Jamaica and see if you can set up a drug smuggler." And I lived in Jamaica when I was 19. I was on the run from a case that my name came up with. So I went to Jamaica for 7 months to chill out. And so I'm down in Kingston, when Kingston's one of the most dangerous cities in the world at this time. At that time, it was one of the most dangerous places in the world. I go down and my handler is a black American, which stands out from Jamaicans because Jamaicans are Indians and Africans, and he's an American. And he's in a green Range Rover. And I'm like, dude, he tells me to meet him in the middle of the town square, like by the hotel. I'm like, dude, are you fucking kidding me? Like everybody, it's a cook, they have like a cook and a telegraph. They'll call, hey, your guy. So the Jamaican that was going to meet me had stalled for a couple days. He knocks on my hotel room door, and this is a Chinaman, they call him down there. There's a lot of Chinese businessmen Jamaica's like a boiling pot of people, like Chinese, Americans, Europeans. And he goes, I guess he either heard me on the phone talking to my DEA up in Jacksonville, or somebody saw me with the DEA agent. But he goes, you're a bad man. You're a bad man. You know what happens to people down here like you? And what they do in Jamaica is they don't have guns or bullets. Bullets are life sentence. So what they do is take you out to a field and they hack you to death with machetes. It's called the Jamaican Machete Party. And I'm going, no, man, you don't understand. I know the runnings down here, man. Me go to the grill. I need you, and I'm talking patois to him, my broken patois, which is because I knew a little bit of patois like that, like I know the curse words, and right. And he's like, you're a man, you know what happens? I go, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, buddy. If I was talking to my connections. I'm going in the grill. If you don't want to load me, my bird, I need 1,200 pounds. If you can't load it, I'll get another person. He leaves. I call back on my cell phone to Jax. I go, this guy, he's went off on me. I think he made me, but give me a day or so. It's not my handler. So it's the head of the DEA in Jacksonville. His name was Pete Howard, Pete something. And he goes, I can save it, Pete. Give me a day or so to see if I can turn the guy around. He goes, there's no way I'm risking an operative down in Jamaica. No way. Get your suitcase. I had this one leather suitcase that still have today, that had secret compartments in it that would hold like $80,000 in hundreds. And that was my little duffel bag leather. I still use it today. There's no hundreds, unfortunately. There's maybe my passport and a little bit of weed, but there's no hundreds. And it's lasted like 50 years still. 45 is a great suitcase. And he goes, get your suitcase and go sit at the bar. And there was a bar right in front of my door, like a courtyard hotel. And I go sit at the bar and I'm like, I go, man, he goes, I'm telling you, get your suitcase, get your shit, go sit at the bar. So I swear to God, I'm sitting at the bar and there's these two young, middle, 30-something Jamaican, a guy and a girl, and they're drinking what we call Itol. Itol is non-alcoholic, like it's a fruit drink, but, you can tell they can put rum in it and, but it's basically a smoothie.
Right.
And my code name was Kilo Bravo. So my nickname growing up was KB all the time, but my code name for the DEA was Kilo Bravo. And I'm sitting there and these people look at me and they go, get your stuff, we're going to the airport. And I go, huh? And they go, get your stuff, we're going to the airport. And I don't know, the guy looks at me and they're smiling like nice people, like real soft. And they go, Kilo Bravo, get your suitcase, we're going to the airport. And I looked at him, I grabbed my suitcase, they put me in a car. I promise you, I've never been from sitting at a bar to sitting on a plane so fast in my life. I walked right into the airport. They walked me right through customs, right onto the plane. And within like 20 minutes, I'm watching the island leave and I'm flying home. My wife came to pick me up at the airport and she had my little daughter in the car. I remember I was saying goodbye to my daughter 3-4 days ago, thinking, I don't know if I'll ever see her again. I'm going to a foreign country with no backup. So I thought, but it turned out that they did have a backup.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
Or at least they did. Yeah. And that was the scariest, And then you start thinking, well, fuck, if I go to jail, is that guy's Jamaican posse going to fucking kill me in jail? Because now I'm thinking, this guy might have said, hey, the guy that set me up to go down there, maybe he said, listen, I'm sending a guy down. He works for the DEA. Don't kill him, but, don't do business with him. I'm making it look good for I don't know what he did. Yeah. And I don't know how far I was going to go. Maybe he would get, I asked him my handler, I go, what happened to the old man, Tom? He goes, we don't put people in jail for marijuana anymore. So then, even then, I still have no idea what's going to happen when I go to court. And at the last minute, I get a phone call and the lawyers tell me you're going, the cops called it, after 2 years or whatever it was, 19 months, 20, I can't remember the exact months, but they said you can't stall it anymore. You have to come up and be sentenced. And I didn't know what was going to happen. At the last minute, my lawyer calls up and says, you're going to get probation. But that's kind of not the way it went. It was a little hairier than that. And
we're going to talk about that on the next episode when we have you on. Unfortunately, we're running out of time today. Man, before we end this, I want you to be able to plug any social media that you have, any books, and then I will drop all the links to everything he's saying in the description of this video so you guys can go check all that out. How can they find you, man, on social media?
Yeah, so I have a podcast called One Step Over the Line. We're also One Step Over the Line, so we're on YouTube, One Step Over the Line. I have, on Facebook and on, Twitter and TikTok, I have One Step Over the Line. Here's a copy of my book. It's called One Step Over the Line, Confessions of a Marijuana Mercenary. And, hey, here's a picture of one of my race cars, Miami Grand Prix. So when you have money, you spend it on things like that. But, yeah, so One Step Over the Line, Confessions of a Marijuana Mercenary is the book. The website, One Step Over the Line. And anybody that wants a free copy of the book can get it by going to the website and putting in promo code on checkout, the number 1 step and the number 100. So number 1 step 100 and gives you a free copy of the book in either audio or digital, or you can get it on Amazon or Audible. I wrote the book myself. I edited it myself. And I did the audio myself.
Nice, man. And if you want to send all that to me, like I said, I'll drop all that in the description. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, man. I can't wait to have you back on to hear the rest of it. It's an amazing story.
Hey, thanks for having me. You're a great host, and I really appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much.
If you guys are tuning in for the first time, this is the kind of content I cover on this channel. It's not always about straight convict prison stories. We're going to start broadening it up a little more, bring in stories on like this that involve, true crime and just crazy stories in general in life. So if you're heading down the wrong path in life, you can see right now where it's going to end up. It
100%.
never ends good. So
100%.
Yeah.
The criminal doesn't win.
Exactly.
Rarely.
Never retires as a criminal.
No. Hard work gets it done.
Yeah. If you guys could, please do me a favor on your way out, hit that like, drop a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And with that, this is DOC TV Unleashed, and we're out.